Let's talk about modeling, and that's creating objects from scratch. We're going to start with the line tool, and it actually looks like a little pencil, but it's actually the line tool, and that's the official name. You can also find it here under Draw Line, and the shortcut is the letter L on the keyboard. But before we actually get started, I just want to clear things out, so I'm just going to hit New, clear out my scene, and then I'm going to hit the space bar, select this little guy, and hit delete. So that way we have a completely clean open space to play with. Let's go ahead and go to the line tool and see how this works. I'm going to select the tool, and it's really very simple. All you have to do is just left click and you start laying down points. So I'm going to left click here, and you notice how I can just draw a line really wherever I want. Left click again to lay down that line. Left click again, left click again, left click again, and if I come all the way around here, you'll notice how it's starting to snap. Actually, it snaps wherever. I'm going to talk about snapping in just a little bit here, but let's go ahead and snap it to that very first point with our endpoint and click. So when you've completed the circuit here, what it does is it actually creates a plane or a face in SketchUp lingo. And this face is really the start of the 3D modeling process. Now, when you start drawing in SketchUp, you're actually kind of drawing in this open 3D environment here. And when you do that, sometimes you really don't know exactly where you're at. So that's where some of the snapping tools come in handy. But before we get into those, let me go ahead and select all of this and hit the delete key. And I'm going to do another drawing. I'm going to do this a little bit differently. And I'll show you some of the problems that can come up when you're drawing in this open 3D space. So let's just start drawing lines here. I just draw, and I look at that and I say, well, that's a pretty good shape. It's kind of like a chevron shape. If I actually zoom out and around, you'll notice that it really isn't. You actually can create like these little optical illusions of form and space, and so you're not really drawing what you see. So that's where snapping comes in really handy with this line tool. So let's take the line tool and we'll draw again. Now if you lay down a point, you'll notice that as you get close to one of these axes, like the green axis, it will snap. This is a lot like the move tool, how the move tool snaps to red, green, and the blue axis. So if I go over to the red axis, it will snap red. If I go up to the blue axis, it snaps blue. So that makes it very easy to create objects that you know are positioned properly. For example, draw this parallel to the green axis, you'll notice that the line is actually parallel. If I continue and I snap to red, you'll see how it's created a right angle. Now I can come back the other way and I can snap to the green axis, but also notice how as I start coming close to this point here, it will also snap. It snaps red. And what that's telling me is that I'm actually directly across from this point on the red axis. And what this is it's called an inference. Now, what SketchUp does is it infers what your next point is going to be. In other words, it guesses where you're going to go next, and it tries to help you. If I was drawing a rectangle, I would want to lay down my next point here, because then if I snap to the red axis, I would have a perfect rectangle. So this inference really helps. Now you can infer to specific points or axes. You can also snap to other points that are parallel to other edges. Let me show you a little bit about that. I'm going to go ahead and select and delete it. And let's go ahead and try another line. So we're going to go ahead and snap this to the green axis. But this time, I'm going to make one that's not parallel to any axis. But notice here how this also snaps violet or kind of purplish. And that means it's perpendicular to this edge. So in other words, this is a right angle to this edge, which means I can also create things that are parallel to each other and at right angles, and I can create other types of shapes. And that's just using the other types of snapping that we have. Now with the line tool, you don't just have to draw flat objects, you can actually draw vertical objects as well. So let's go ahead and delete this. I'm going to select everything and hit delete, and we're going to draw one more rectangle. I'm just going to draw, snap to green, snap to red, snap to green, and infer that point, and there we go. So there's my rectangle. Now if I want to, I can actually start drawing vertically, and this is where we actually start doing 3D modeling. go up here on the blue axis, and then I go parallel on the blue axis, and then I snap. Now I've got two faces that are actually at a right angle to each other, and I'm starting to get a 3D space. So I can do that again, and just keep going, and actually create a box. So now I've created a 3D object simply by using the line tool.